Welcome back to Sunday Night in America. President Trump will be representing not only America, but freedom-loving people across the world when he meets with Vladimir Putin in Alaska. President Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize for, well, we're not sure. President Trump has ended conflicts around the world and has at least 2 more on his list. He is hitting Russia and those countries like India, which fund the Russian war machine. And then there is the Middle East, where Benjamin Netanyahu says the IDF will take over and control Gaza. For how long? What role will moderate Arab states play and when? And is there a chance Gaza could become Israel's Afghanistan? Joining us are Nathan Sales and Rob Greenway. Both serve President Trump in prominent national security roles. Welcome to you both. Gentlemen, how will President Trump handle Vladimir Putin, and what does success look like in Alaska? Rob, let's start with you, and then you, Nathan.
Well, thanks for having me, Trey. Look, I think President Trump enters the negotiations in Alaska in a very strong position, having just ended the 5th conflict in a series of his first term, and second, having quietly accrued economic pressure against Putin, who last year was posting 4.5% GDP growth, is down to 1.4%. Rallied NATO to commit to 5% and increase collective defense. And so I think he's got the best chance of taking the positive next step, having applied pressure. And I think Putin understands he's in a position to start making concessions, and I hope that's what happens next. And if it does, I think we're on the cusp of the 6th peace broker negotiations that President Trump has been able to accomplish.
Nathan.
Well, it looks like Putin blinked. Why is Putin prepared to talk today when he resisted for months and years? And I think the reason is because Trump's got his number. He knows, based on the sanctions that President Trump has threatened against India, that President Trump and the United States are able to bring Russia's house of cards economy crashing down. And so the reason Putin is coming to the table now is because the United States has leverage, and we have signaled unmistakably we are prepared to use it. So this is no time to go wobbly. Now is the time to press our advantage and make sure that these talks yield a deal that is actually durable, one that will prevent Putin from taking a couple of years, rearm, recharge, and then taking another crack at Ukraine and maybe more. What we need is a permanent, final, and irrevocable solution that prevents Putin from trying again later.
Well, speaking of a permanent peace, one has evaded the Middle East for a long time. Let's move to that region and listen to President Trump, and I'll ask you about it on the other side.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you support Israel reoccupying all of Gaza, as has been suggested by some Israeli officials?
Well, I don't know what the suggestion is. I know that we are there now trying to get people fed. As you know, $60 million was given by the United States fairly recently to supply food, and a lot of food, frankly, for the people of Gaza that are obviously not doing too well with the food. And I know Israel is going to help us with that in terms of distribution and also money. We also have the Arab states are going to help us with that in terms of the money and possibly distribution. So that's what I'm focused on. As far as the rest of it, I really can't say. That's going to be pretty much up to Israel.
President Trump's dream is generational peace in the Middle East, which requires Israel to cooperate with moderate Arab states. Who should run Gaza? Where should Palestinians live? And how will Netanyahu keep his coalition together when or if war ends? Those are all questions that I think are bouncing around in people's minds. Nathan, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Rob. How do you see the Middle East? Because it really looks like Netanyahu is getting pressure at home to end this conflict, but they're moving forward into Gaza with talks of occupying it.
Yeah, Trey. Israel is the one that is feeling all the pressure. Domestically, Netanyahu is starting to feel some heat from a population that is war-weary, that wants to wrap this up and bring the hostages home. But I think even more significant, we're starting to see Western countries in Europe and in Canada as well, applying pressure to Israel to try and force them to the table. The pressure tactic they're using is threatening to recognize a Palestinian state. There's a lot you could say for or against that, but the timing of this is spectacularly ill-conceived. Israel is not the problem to peace. The problem for peace is Hamas, which has dug in its heels, which refuses to surrender, which refuses to release the hostages, which refuses to go into exile. So if you want peace, you have to apply pressure to the party that is the holdout, and that is absolutely Hamas. So rather than trying to force Israel to take a bad deal, let's work on getting Hamas to come back to the table, because they walked away the moment they saw the French and the Brits and the Germans start to carry water for them and say, let's recognize the Palestinian state.
Rob, how do you see this playing out? There are international pressures, which Nathan alluded to. I doubt Israel cares about that. But there are also domestic issues within Israel with this coalition that Netanyahu has. I mean, he's got to thread a pretty tight needle. How do you think he's going to do it?
So he does, and I'd endorse Nathan's comments completely. I think internally you're seeing a dynamic shift. That part of it is because Hamas has rejected every ceasefire proposal, and now both groups representing the families of hostages still in Hamas custody are now largely supporting a continuation of the conflict on terms favorable to Israel. Look, if you're left with a choice between who's going to govern Gaza, between the terrorists that committed unspeakable atrocities on October the 7th and Israel as a bridge to a transitional power, the choice is easy, and I think that's exactly what's confronting us. I do think that it'll be easier for other states to participate once Israel has achieved its initial goals.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the hostages and/or their remains. And let us not also forget, there are thousands of Ukrainian children that were kidnapped and taken to Russia. So this is about more than territory. It's about real life, which is about the only thing that matters in the final analysis. Rob and Nathan, thank you so much for loaning us your expertise on a Sunday night. Hope to see you both soon.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.